Have you ever felt your heart racing, your palms sweating, and your mind spiraling into worst-case scenarios, all while sitting completely still? What if I told you that in the next 2 minutes, you could interrupt that anxiety response using a technique so simple that ancient monks and modern neuroscientists both swear by it? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to have a tool that you can use anywhere, anytime, without anyone even knowing you're doing it. And the best part is that it works with your body's natural biology, not against it. Now, before we dive into exactly how to do this practice, I need you to understand something crucial about anxiety that most people get completely wrong. Anxiety isn't your enemy. I know that sounds crazy when you're in the middle of a panic attack, or lying awake at 3 in the morning worrying about everything that could possibly go wrong. But hear me out. Your anxiety response is actually your brain trying to protect you. It's an ancient survival mechanism that kept our ancestors alive when they were facing actual physical threats, like predators or hostile environments. The problem is that in our modern world, our brains haven't quite caught up with the fact that most of the things we're anxious about aren't actually going to kill us. Your brain can't tell the difference between a charging lion and an upcoming presentation at work, between a physical threat and an email from your boss that says we need to talk. So it activates the same fight or flight response for both scenarios, flooding your body with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, increasing your heart rate, sharpening your focus, and preparing you to either fight or run away. But here's the thing. When you're sitting at your desk or lying in bed, you can't physically fight or flee, so all that energy and tension just builds up inside you with nowhere to go, creating that awful feeling of anxiety that so many of us know too well. This is where our 2-minute practice comes in, and it's based on a fascinating aspect of human biology that most people don't know about. Your nervous system has 2 main branches: the sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for that fight or flight response, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for rest and digest mode. Think of them like the gas pedal and the brake pedal in a car. When anxiety hits, your sympathetic nervous system is flooring the gas pedal, and what we need to do is activate the brake, the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, most people try to fight anxiety with their thoughts, telling themselves to calm down, to stop worrying, to think positive thoughts, and while cognitive techniques definitely have their place, they're trying to use the thinking brain to override the survival brain, and that's like trying to reason with a fire alarm while the building is burning. What we need is a more direct route, a way to communicate with our nervous system in a language it actually understands, and that language is the breath. Your breath is the only part of your autonomic nervous system that you can consciously control, and it's also directly connected to your nervous system state. When you're anxious, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. When you're calm, your breathing is slow and deep. But here's the incredible part. This relationship works both ways. Your emotional state affects your breathing, but your breathing also affects your emotional state. This means you can literally breathe your way out of anxiety, and this isn't just some new age theory. It's backed by solid neuroscience. Studies have shown that controlled breathing can reduce cortisol levels, lower blood pressure, decrease heart rate, and activate the parasympathetic nervous system within minutes. So let me teach you the exact technique that you can use to stop anxiety in its tracks. This practice is called physiological sigh breathing, and it was actually studied extensively by researchers at Stanford University, who found that it's one of the fastest ways to reduce stress and anxiety in real time. The technique is incredibly simple, but remarkably powerful. Here's how it works. You're going to take 2 inhales through your nose, followed by 1 extended exhale through your mouth. Let me break that down more specifically. First, you take a deep breath in through your nose, filling your lungs about 80 to 90% full. Then, before you exhale, you take a second shorter inhale, a little sip of air through your nose to completely fill your lungs to maximum capacity. Then you exhale slowly and completely through your mouth, making the exhale longer than your inhales. That's it. That's the entire technique. 2 inhales through the nose, 1 long exhale through the mouth. Now let me explain why this works so well, because understanding the mechanism makes it even more effective. When you're anxious, the tiny air sacs in your lungs called alveoli can partially collapse, which means you're not getting optimal oxygen exchange and carbon dioxide can build up in your bloodstream. That second sip of air, that little top-off breath, reinflates those collapsed air sacs. Then the long exhale activates your vagus nerve, which is the main nerve of your parasympathetic nervous system, essentially telling your body that you're safe and it can turn off the alarm. The extended exhale also helps offload excess carbon dioxide, which when it builds up can actually trigger anxiety symptoms. So this simple pattern of breathing is working on multiple biological levels simultaneously to shift your nervous system from fight or flight mode into rest and digest mode. Now I want you to try this with me right now. Don't wait until you're anxious to learn this technique. Practice it now while you're calm so that when anxiety does strike, you already have the muscle memory and you know exactly what to do. So wherever you are, sitting, standing, lying down, just get into a comfortable position. Let your shoulders relax, soften your jaw, and let's do this together. Ready? Take a deep breath in through your nose, filling your lungs about 80 to 90%. Now take a second shorter breath in through your nose, topping off your lungs. And now exhale slowly through your mouth, letting all that air out, emptying your lungs completely. How do you feel? Even just one cycle can make a difference. But here's the key. When you're actually experiencing anxiety, you want to repeat this cycle 2 to 3 times. That's why I say this takes about 2 minutes, because doing 3 cycles of physiological sighs, with a few seconds in between, takes roughly 2 minutes, and that's enough time to significantly shift your nervous system state. Now I know what some of you might be thinking. This seems too simple. How can just breathing differently really stop anxiety? And I get it. We live in a world that tells us that solutions to our problems need to be complicated, expensive, or require years of therapy or medication. And look, I'm not saying that therapy and medication don't have their place. They absolutely do for many people. But what I am saying is that you also have this incredible built-in tool, your breath, that you can access anywhere, anytime, without anyone even knowing you're doing it. You can do this in a meeting, on a plane, before a presentation, in the middle of a difficult conversation, waiting for test results, sitting in traffic, lying in bed at 3 in the morning. The beauty of this technique is its accessibility and its immediacy. You don't need any special equipment. You don't need to download an app. You don't need to be in a quiet room with your eyes closed, although those things can certainly enhance the practice if you have access to them. You just need to remember 2 breaths in through the nose, 1 long breath out through the mouth, and your nervous system will respond. But here's something really important that I need you to understand. This technique isn't about making anxiety disappear forever or never feeling anxious again. That's not a realistic goal, and honestly, it wouldn't even be healthy. Remember, anxiety serves a purpose. It alerts us to potential threats and helps us prepare for challenges. The goal isn't to eliminate anxiety. It's to prevent it from overwhelming you and to have tools to manage it when it does arise. Think of this breathing technique as a circuit breaker for your anxiety. When the system is overloaded and about to short out, you flip the switch. Give yourself a moment to reset, and then you can address whatever situation triggered the anxiety from a calmer, more grounded place. And the more you practice this technique, the more effective it becomes. It's like building a muscle. The first few times you do it, you might notice a small shift. But as you practice regularly, your nervous system starts to recognize the pattern more quickly and responds more efficiently. You're essentially training your body to shift out of anxiety mode faster and more completely. Now let me give you some practical tips for making this technique even more effective. First, try to make your exhale significantly longer than your inhales. Some people count during their breathing, maybe inhaling for a count of 4 on the first breath, 2 on the second breath, and then exhaling for a count of 8 or 10. The exact numbers don't matter as much as making sure that exhale is nice and long, because that's what really activates the parasympathetic nervous system. Second, when you exhale through your mouth, you can purse your lips slightly, almost like you're blowing through a straw. This creates a little bit of resistance that slows down the exhale naturally and gives you more control. Some people find it helpful to make a soft sighing sound on the exhale, which is actually where the name physiological sigh comes from. That sigh is your body's natural way of releasing tension. Have you ever noticed that when you're stressed or at the end of a long day, you'll automatically let out a big sigh? That's your body trying to regulate itself and we're just harnessing that natural mechanism intentionally. Third, you can enhance this technique by paying attention to your body as you breathe. Notice your shoulders dropping on the exhale. Feel your jaw softening. Sense the tension releasing from your chest and belly. This adds a somatic or body-based element to the practice that makes it even more powerful. You're not just changing your breathing pattern, you're actively releasing physical tension that accompanies anxiety. Fourth, and this is really important, try to catch anxiety early. This technique works best when you notice the first signs of anxiety creeping in, that little flutter in your chest, that slight tightness in your throat, those initial worried thoughts. If you can intervene at that early stage with 2 minutes of physiological sighs, you can often prevent the anxiety from escalating into a full-blown panic attack or anxiety spiral. It's much easier to calm a nervous system that's just starting to activate than one that's already in full fight or flight mode. Although even then, this technique can still help. Now I want to talk about some common mistakes people make when trying breathing exercises for anxiety, because knowing what not to do is just as important as knowing what to do. The first mistake is breathing too deeply or too quickly. You might think that more air equals better results, but actually overbreathing can make anxiety worse by causing a rapid drop in carbon dioxide levels, which can create symptoms like dizziness, tingling, and even more anxiety. So take full breaths, yes, but don't force it or strain. It should feel natural and comfortable. The second mistake is holding your breath between cycles. Some people take their 2 inhales, do the long exhale, and then hold their breath before starting the next cycle. Don't do that. Just breathe normally for a few seconds between cycles, giving your body a chance to integrate the shift before doing the next round. The third mistake is giving up too quickly. If you try this once and don't feel an immediate dramatic shift, you might think it doesn't work for you. But remember, this is a practice, and it gets more effective with repetition. Also, the shift might be subtle at first. You might not go from full panic to complete calm in 2 minutes, but you might go from an anxiety level of 8 out of 10 to a 6 out of 10, and that's still significant. That's still your nervous system responding and moving in the right direction. The fourth mistake is only using this technique when you're already in crisis mode. While it absolutely can help in acute anxiety situations, the real power comes from practicing it regularly, even when you're not anxious. This is called building your baseline, training your nervous system to be more resilient and less reactive overall. If you do 3 cycles of physiological sighs every morning, when you wake up and every evening before bed, you're essentially strengthening your parasympathetic nervous system, making it easier for your body to shift into calm mode when you need it to. Think of it like this: if you only ever lifted weights when you needed to move something heavy, you wouldn't be very strong and the lifting would be really hard. But if you lift weights regularly, building your strength over time, then when you need to move something heavy, it's much easier. The same principle applies to your nervous system. Regular practice makes the technique more effective when you really need it. Now I want to address something that comes up a lot when people learn breathing techniques for anxiety. Some of you might be thinking, but what about the thoughts? What about all the worrying and the what-ifs and the catastrophic thinking that comes with anxiety? How does breathing address that? And it's a great question, because anxiety isn't just a physical experience. It's also a mental and emotional one. Here's the thing. Trying to change your thoughts when you're in a state of high anxiety is incredibly difficult, because when your nervous system is activated, your prefrontal cortex, the rational thinking part of your brain, is essentially offline. Blood flow and resources are redirected to the more primitive survival parts of your brain. That's why when you're really anxious, you can know logically that you're safe and that your worries are probably overblown, but you can't seem to convince yourself of that emotionally. The thoughts just keep spinning. But when you use breathing to calm your nervous system first, you're essentially bringing your prefrontal cortex back online. You're creating the physiological conditions that allow for clearer, more rational thinking. So the sequence is important. Calm the body first through breathing, and then you can work with the thoughts from a more grounded place. It's like trying to have a reasonable conversation with someone. You need to wait until they're calm enough to actually hear you. You can't reason with someone who's in full panic mode, and you can't reason with your own anxious brain when your nervous system is activated. Calm the system first, then engage the thinking. Another powerful aspect of this breathing technique is that it gives you something to focus on when anxiety hits. One of the most overwhelming aspects of anxiety is the feeling of helplessness, the sense that you're at the mercy of this terrible feeling with no way to make it stop. Having a concrete action to take, a specific breathing pattern to focus on, gives you back a sense of control and agency. You're no longer a passive victim of your anxiety. You're actively working with your body to shift your state. And that psychological shift, that sense of having some control, is incredibly powerful in and of itself. Now let me share with you some variations and additional techniques that you can combine with physiological sigh breathing to make it even more effective. One powerful addition is grounding. While you're doing your breathing cycles, also engage your 5 senses to anchor yourself in the present moment. Notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This combination of physiological regulation through breathing and mental grounding through sensory awareness creates a 2-pronged approach that's incredibly effective for interrupting anxiety spirals. Another variation is to add a gentle physical touch. While you're breathing, you can place 1 hand on your heart and 1 hand on your belly. This self-soothing touch activates your mammalian caregiving system, releasing oxytocin, which is a natural anxiety reducer. You can also try giving yourself a gentle hug, crossing your arms and holding your shoulders while you breathe. This might feel a little silly at first, but it's actually based on solid science about how physical touch, even self-administered, can calm the nervous system. You can also combine physiological sigh breathing with a technique called worry time containment. When anxious thoughts come up while you're breathing, instead of trying to push them away or engaging with them, you can mentally note them and tell yourself, "I'll think about that later during my designated worry time." Then return your focus to the breath. This acknowledges the thoughts without getting caught up in them, and it can help you stay focused on the breathing practice without feeling like you're ignoring important concerns. Now I want to talk about what happens after you've done your 2 minutes of physiological sigh breathing and you've successfully calmed your nervous system. This is where a lot of people make a crucial mistake. They calm themselves down, feel better, and then immediately go back to whatever was making them anxious in the first place without any shift in their approach. And within minutes, the anxiety is back. Using this breathing technique isn't just about getting temporary relief. Although that's certainly valuable, it's about creating a window of calm that allows you to respond to your situation more effectively. Once you've regulated your nervous system, take a moment to assess the situation from this calmer place. Ask yourself, is there actually a threat right now in this moment? Or am I worrying about something that might happen in the future? If there's no immediate threat, remind yourself that you're safe right now. If there is a real challenge or problem that needs addressing, your calm nervous system will allow you to think more clearly about practical solutions. You might ask yourself, what's one small step I can take right now to address this situation? What's actually within my control here? What support or resources do I have available? These questions are much easier to answer and act on when you're operating from a regulated nervous system rather than from a place of panic. And here's something really important that I want you to understand about anxiety and about this practice. This isn't about achieving some perfect state of Zen-like calm where nothing ever bothers you. That's not realistic, and honestly, it's not even desirable. Emotions, including anxiety, are part of being human. They give us important information about our environment and our needs. The goal is to have a healthy relationship with your anxiety, where you can acknowledge it, regulate it when it's overwhelming, and learn from it rather than being controlled by it. Think of anxiety like a smoke detector in your house. When it goes off, you don't want to just remove the batteries so you can't hear it anymore, but you also don't want to let it blare constantly when there's no fire. You want to investigate, see if there's actually danger or if something is just burning in the kitchen, address the situation appropriately, and then the alarm naturally quiets down. This breathing technique is like having a way to turn down the volume on that alarm so you can think clearly enough to investigate and respond appropriately. Now let me give you a really practical roadmap for implementing this technique in your daily life, because knowing about a tool and actually using it effectively are 2 different things. Starting today, I want you to practice physiological sigh breathing 3 times once in the morning, once in the afternoon, and once in the evening. Set reminders on your phone if you need to. Do 3 cycles each time, which takes about 2 minutes. Do this regardless of whether you're feeling anxious or not. This builds your baseline and familiarizes your nervous system with the pattern. After a week of regular practice, you'll start to notice that the technique becomes almost automatic, and your nervous system will begin responding more quickly. Then, whenever you notice anxiety starting to creep in, use this as your first-line intervention. Before you reach for your phone to distract yourself, before you start frantically problem-solving, before you spiral into worst-case scenario thinking, take 2 minutes to breathe. 3 cycles of physiological sighs. Give your nervous system a chance to regulate before you do anything else. You'll be amazed at how often this simple intervention prevents anxiety from escalating and allows you to respond to situations more effectively. Keep a simple log for the first few weeks, just a note in your phone or a little journal where you jot down when you use the technique and what you noticed. Did your anxiety level decrease? By how much? What was the situation? This isn't about judgment or perfectionism. It's about building awareness of what works for you and reinforcing the practice. Over time, you'll start to notice patterns. Maybe you realize that your anxiety tends to spike at certain times of day or in certain situations, and you can start using the breathing proactively before those situations rather than reactively after anxiety has already hit. And here's the beautiful thing. As you continue to practice this technique, you'll probably notice benefits beyond just anxiety reduction. People often report sleeping better because they use physiological sigh breathing before bed to calm their nervous system. They report being less reactive in conflicts because they can regulate themselves before responding. They report feeling more present and focused because they're spending less mental energy managing anxiety. They report feeling more confident because they know they have a tool they can count on when stress arises. This simple breathing practice can become a cornerstone of your overall emotional regulation and mental health. Now, before we wrap up, I want to address one more thing that's really important. Some of you watching this might be dealing with clinical anxiety disorders, panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety, or other conditions where anxiety is severe, persistent, and significantly impacting your daily life. If that's you, I want you to know that this breathing technique can absolutely be a helpful tool in your toolkit, but it's not a replacement for professional treatment. If your anxiety is severe or chronic, please reach out to a mental health professional, whether that's a therapist, psychiatrist, or counselor. There are highly effective treatments available, including cognitive behavioral therapy, medication, and other evidence-based approaches, and you deserve support. This breathing technique can work beautifully alongside professional treatment. Many therapists actually teach similar techniques, but it shouldn't be your only strategy if you're dealing with a clinical condition. There's no shame in needing more support, and getting help is actually one of the most courageous things you can do. So to bring all of this together, you now have a powerful, scientifically backed technique that you can use to stop anxiety in 2 minutes. 2 inhales through your nose, 1 long exhale through your mouth, repeated for 3 cycles. It works by reinflating collapsed air sacs in your lungs, activating your vagus nerve, and shifting your nervous system from fight or flight mode into rest and digest mode. It's free, it's accessible, you can do it anywhere, and it becomes more effective the more you practice it. Start using it today, not just when you're anxious, but as a regular practice to build your nervous system resilience. Notice the shifts, both subtle and dramatic, that come from taking control of your breath and thereby taking back control from your anxiety. Remember that anxiety isn't your enemy. It's your overprotective friend who sometimes needs to be gently reminded that you're safe. And now you have a way to have that conversation, not with words but with breath, speaking directly to your nervous system in the language it understands. Your breath is always with you, always available, always ready to help you find your way back to calm. Use it, practice it, trust it, and watch how this simple 2-minute practice transforms your relationship with anxiety.